Hi, I'm Amy Cardoso and welcome to Art This Week. On this week's episode, we visit the Dallas Museum of Art and our interviewer, Rachel Livedalen, speaks with curator Gabriel Ritter about the exhibition Concentration 60, Lucie Stahl. Now for Art This Week. I'm Rachel Livedalen here at the Dallas Museum of Art with Gabriel Ritter, curator of the exhibition Concentration 60, Lucie Stahl. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk with us. So my first question is, when did you first come across Lucie's work and what attracted you to the work?
I think I first saw the work in a group show in LA in maybe 2011 or maybe 2012, and then soon after that we met together. What drew me to the work and what's always interested me, even before getting to know Lucie, as a friend, is this place between the image and the object. I've always been very interested, and it's not just Lucie, but in how artists are kind of playing with this in-between space, this kind of ambiguous space between, in this case, it's not necessarily a photographic image, it's done with a flatbed scanner, but then the fact that it has this very material quality with the epoxy resin that gets spread on top of it, there is this kind of, they're images that also operate as kind of sculptural objects, and there's somewhere they sort of hint at painting in their format, and that they're on the wall, but they're not a kind of traditional photograph. I've always been really taken by that, and her work has also somewhat been aligned with post-internet art, and there have been articles written that really look at the finish fetish of the surface and its relationship, say, to the iPhone or to the computer screen. And while that interests me, I think there's a lot more to the work, but that was also kind of a way into the work for me. I was very interested in this kind of screen space and how that reality or that approach to images can also be translated into a physical space. And so Lucie's work has always kind of sort of checked off those boxes for me.
And so you mentioned that she's kind of working in between photography or maybe collage.
Mm-hmm.
And these seem almost like digital photograms in a way.
Yeah.
How does she describe the scanner? Does she use it like a camera, or is it another tool for the making?
Yeah, and I think the relationship of these to the photograms are really interesting, because I think she does really see her work in a lineage of kind of surrealist output, and so some of those photograms fit very nicely in that with the work of Man Ray and people like that. She calls these posters, and I think they are called posters because, on the one hand, there is this play with scale, and sometimes, even in this show, there is a bit of they may delve into politics, and so there is a kind of a nod to propaganda posters. But her work, again, not only in its physical form, but kind of in its conceptually, how she's thinking through the images and the content of the work, is also this ambiguous territory where she is not really making a specific message, for or against sort of anything. But she calls them posters, and she does have other work that is done with a professional or done with a traditional camera. And they're executed in the same way. It's a photograph that's taken, it's blown up, it's then covered in resin, and it becomes this unique object. These, I think she sees the scanner as an imaging tool. I don't think she sees it as a stand-in for the camera, because it operates in a very different way. A really good case in point is just formally, it flattens everything. A lot of the things, even earlier work that's in the exhibition, they use it's all using kind of found 3D objects, but the scanner the way it takes in information sort of compresses everything. So if it is circular, you really just get this face. But at the same time, and she was mentioning this, and you see it a bit in this show, it even registers light in a very different way than a camera. It actually, the background that you see here, if it's not black, because black is just her working in a closed room in the studio where it's probably, there's not no windows open, or it's a completely sealed off room. Others range from like earthy browns to pinks, and that's actually she was mentioning the heat signature that the scanner registers of natural light. So it doesn't, unlike a camera, it doesn't register the outer world or the environment in the same way, and so she has to constantly be accommodating for that. So she'll create, some of the work is actually a diorama. The one behind you is this, I don't know where she found this diorama, but you can imagine it's just placed on the scanner and scanned kind of edge to edge. But some of the others, if it has a pink background, that's probably light flooding into the studio. There's another piece in the show that has very bright light, and that actually is scanned outdoors at noon with the sun immediately above the scanner itself. And that's how you get this like really harsh kind of pouring in of light. So it obviously, like the camera, is an imaging tool, but it operates in completely different, its own set of terms, and I think Lucie has really embraced those.
It's interesting to hear you refer to these as posters. I know I wouldn't necessarily come in and see an object on the wall like a poster, but it's a very interesting term because it also links in to this idea of advertising.
Yes.
And we see some images in the works like the Dr. Pepper can, the Coca-Cola can, that also tie into advertising.
Right.
So could you maybe explain that a little further?
Sure, and that's another thing that's drawn me to Lucie's work, is this kind of, I wouldn't say in terms of branding, it's maybe a little less ambiguous. I think she is registering like mass production, consumer products, and their branding as a kind of, these things are all working in tandem to create these images and objects that circulate in the world that we're surrounded by. They're ubiquitous. So something like Coca-Cola has taken on a kind of iconic place in, whether it's American visual culture, or actually in international visual culture, or international kind of culture in and of itself. And so I think in terms of branding, there's two things that are going on. One is she's looking at how branding through, say, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's through bottled water, how it is very closely related to how we form our own identity. And so someone drinks Coke as opposed to Pepsi. Oddly enough, these things mean something to us. And these brands become kind of vessels or containers for a lot of our baggage. The other side of the branding, which I think is maybe less apparent to, say, an American audience, is, say, with something like Coca-Cola. Lucie, born and raised and still working in Berlin, these images of kind of Americana and their relationships, say, to actually Cold War Europe, resonate in a different way. And when GIs after World War II and during the Cold War were giving out, bubble gum and Coca-Cola to kids in Germany, I mean, there's a different relationship that you have to these things, and I think she is also looking at whether it's Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, these things for her almost operate in like a kind of American folklore that seems very second nature to us. And there's a piece in the show titled Water Crisis that has this Volvic bottle, and it's natural spring water, but it's filled with actually this like wheatgrass drink, and it looks like green sludge, and it has like this weird iconography of sewage pipes. And so I think she's really skeptical of both, and branding can be used in these different ways, and we interpret it and intuit it in our personal lives in different ways. And for me, I really like this, the ambiguity that she leaves in the space for the viewer. You can come and see these objects and these images, and you insert yourself into them, and you also take away what you will. I think this show can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
So there are both two-dimensional and three-dimensional works within the show. How do they relate to one another, and how did you select particular bodies of work for the exhibition?
Yeah, okay, that's actually a good question. So I mean, one thing that the show doesn't feature, it in no way is a kind of survey of what Lucie does. There's a lot of earlier work that is much more sculptural, whether it be she has, sort of functional objects that exist as tables. She's also created large sculptural pieces that aren't featured in this show. In terms of the focus, since this is the first US museum show, and what she is primarily known for and what she creates are the posters, I really wanted to focus on that body of work. But there are these prayer wheels that have kind of always been a part of the practice, and I think are always kind of there in the background. There's other objects where she's done where there's like hands that come off the wall that are also roughly this scale. For me, these, and I think for Lucie too, for this installation, these were a very logical addition because you see the cans very obviously in the two-dimensional work. And I think some of the cans you see there are physically the cans that are shown here. And they nicely dovetail with her time spent here in Dallas or Texas more generally. When she came for a site visit to see the museum initially, she and a friend of hers did a long road trip from Dallas to Los Angeles. And so in the Texas desert, kind of in abandoned areas, she will find these things and then collect them, and then they'll have a second life as part of her sculptural practice. I think some of these may also come from the California desert, and there's a different type of one, they have a kind of patina to them that her work often has this kind of timeless quality because for me it has a lot to do with this digital imaging process, but these are very aged, and they're bleached by the sun. Some of them, I think, you can see have been probably used as like BB gun practice or something like that. And a lot of her work does play with trash and detritus and the kind of what happens to things after we've consumed them. And I think, it's again this kind of ambiguous territory, but because they're titled prayer wheels and they're each sort of like prayer wheel, Amstel, prayer wheel, untitled prayer wheel Dr. Pepper is sort of how the naming convention for these. But, they reference this Tibetan Buddhist practice of physically, turning these wheels that then enact the reading of a prayer. And I think she does read into these objects, or at least she imbues them with a kind of spirituality. Again, it is not clearly defined what that is for her. And so for us, they do still kind of exist as these inert objects, but because of the title and also the way that she's transformed them, they're sort of brought into, I guess you could say, a larger art historical narrative where it is about, I don't know, is it about Buddhism? Is it about this kind of spiritual aspect of devotional objects? And it, again, this is kind of murky territory, but a lot more gets read into the objects. For me, even just the way this corridor is created, there's a really interesting moment where it feels like you're kind of stepping through the image to the physical side, what's happening on the other side. And even a work like Whistleblower, which is behind us, plays with this idea of the portal, and that these images seem to be a way to transport the viewer from one reality to another. Other works, again in this three-dimensional mode, actually have a pipe running through them, as if that's a kind of conduit between one reality or another, or one side of the image and the other. And so I think it's really nice, this kind of dramatic lighting back here kind of gives a sort of drama or theatricality to this a much more intimate space back here.
Well, thank you so much for talking
My
with us
pleasure.
today. It's a fantastic show.
Thanks very much.
We want to thank Gabriel for speaking with us. For more information on the exhibition, go to dma.org. That's it for Art This Week. Thanks for watching.
I still got your Polaroid.